Ooh, the new analytics are in. Our viewership is really astounding as of late. We have people in Serbia, China, Japan, Ecuador, all tuning in to see me, the show. There are all manner of influential people showing interest.
What's wrong with your voice? Are you feeling all right?
I feel marvelous. As a matter of fact, I was just telling that to JJ over latte this morning about how great I've been feeling lately. Then Bobby De Niro stopped by and interrupted us. He's good people, that Bobby. He offered a little advice about the direction of our show. Both he and the J-Man seemed to feel that I should make a few changes.
Yeah, I think so too. I have a few great ideas for some opening skits we can do in the next several weeks. They could be really funny. There's a great one with Chalaski I've been thinking about. He shows up in the studio with...
Yes. Anyway, they think I need a new sideman. Someone with a level of celebrity a little closer to my own. So I talked it over with my agent and...
Your agent? Since when do you have an...
And he got me the perfect match. There are no limits to how far this could go now. I'm sorry about all this, but you understand. It's all for the good of my show. You should be happy for me.
You're replacing me? I knew it. And I'm supposed to be happy about this? Of all the egotistical, self-centered, and inconsiderate, I'll show you happy.
Can you believe how disloyal he is? And all this time, I thought he was my friend. It just goes to show how a little success can change some people.
Foundry changes, spotlights, interviews, and more tonight in the news.
The newscast is also brought to you by Mr. Breen. Flash freezes 99.9% of household bacteria in a microsecond.
Tonight we lead off with changes to the Foundry. A number of TOS-era objects were added to the editor, in addition to Tholians. These TOS objects are a console and several other decorative objects or sets. These additions, however, have been overshadowed by two major changes to the Foundry of late, which have caused a great stir in the game community at large and launched what this newsreader can only loosely call a heated debate in the forums and other media. The first change was to an NPC setting called Timid. This setting, in its original form, basically rendered an NPC unresponsive and immobile. This was changed so that if a timid mob was attacked, it would react by moving and fighting back. This has generated anger in some quarters, but this anger has bled into a second, larger change to the Foundry reward system. This second change removed from the game the Foundry wrapper, which had granted fleet marks and dilithium every 30 minutes to players. This has been changed so that all qualifying missions award dilithium based on their average playtimes. Spotlight missions, in addition to this average playtime reward, are also supposed to, once every 24 hours, reward an additional 1440 dilithium and a scaled amount of energy credits. This, however, does not seem to be occurring, as the special reward seems to be going off, but not the playtime and the energy credit reward. This change, however, completely removed fleet marks from the equation. The removal of these fleet marks has become a contentious point, as many small fleets use this in order to supplement their ability to proceed in their starbase construction. This is an ongoing story, and later updates very likely will occur. Additionally, Star Trek Online was announced as the best free MMO of 2012 by MMORPG Center. Congratulations to everybody on the Star Trek Online team. The Foundry Challenge 5 winner was announced. That winner was Spectres, Episode 6 by Hippie John. This mission's also a spotlight mission. Foundry Challenge 6 was announced. This will involve the Thalians. This challenge ends on February 27th, 2013, so hurry if you wish to enter the fray. Information on this can be found in the forums. Ask Cryptics for both January and February were released. The January release featured a question regarding UI improvements for searching for missions, which was stated it was being looked into, whereas the February Ask Cryptic had no real news regarding anything Foundry related. We saw Starbase and Embassy feature projects come up. Feature Project 12 added additional staffing to the bases. Federation players got exocomps in their starbase, whereas the Klingons got Pharisians. Project 13 added additional customizations to the interior, allowing Federation players to see deep into the bowels of their station, whereas Klingon stations got upgraded staircase railings with decorations along with them. Another Embassy project has also gone live, and this adds more decorative aspects to the stairwells of starbases, adding sitting areas and aquariums. The temporal lockbox went away. This lockbox was replaced with the Dominion lockbox, which within it contained a Jem'Hadar heavy escort carrier, cross-faction starship consoles, new dilithium mining claim packages, VIP customers and preferred customers. These allow players to go to the dilithium mining event in the Beta Ursae sector, which would allow them to mine a richer vein of dilithium and thereby get a larger amount of dilithium crystals out of it. Also in the pack are Phase Polarian weapons, Gamma Quadrant and Reinforcement Duty Officer packs, a Jem'Hadar Dreadnought carrier, and Jem'Hadar ground and space set upgrades to allow you to turn your awarded Jem'Hadar sets into Mark 12 sets. Also a Jem'Hadar wide area minigun, and companion pets and more nano energy cells. Star Trek Online is also offering the Halolita Doff again to any player who attends the Creation Events Grand Slam convention that is occurring before this podcast. Details for those who attended can be located on Star Trek Online's news archive. Dan Stahl also released a new State of the Game. This State of the Game reviewed where the game was from where it was when it started and led into our 3rd anniversary event. This event saw release of a new episode, Temporal Ambassador, as well as granting players the ability to earn a Tier 3 and Tier 5 ship of their faction. For Federation players, it was the Ambassador class. For the Klingons, it's the Camarang class battlecruiser. These, presently, are not available in the Foundry. The 3rd anniversary video was released, at the end of which was teased with a distinctively Romulan banner, the words "March Beneath the Raptor's Wings, May 2013. This lit off waves of speculation throughout the community as to what we will see come May. Additionally, in regards to the ships, fleet versions have been released to be purchased. These are obviously upgraded versions of the ships that can be obtained through playing the mission. Also, a new ship pack was teased as well, the fabled Andorian cruisers that we've been watching for several years. It appears that there will now be 3 variations on this theme, much like the Vesta and the Odyssey classes, and they will be C-Store releases. Details should be released to the community soon after this podcast goes live. The spotlights that have occurred since our last broadcast. For the Federation, we have First Cause, Then Effect by Rogue Enterprise. Spectres, Episode 6, the winner of Foundry Challenge 5. For the Klingons, we had the Klingon Honor Carol by Ceridium, Vulture Wheel by Darren Kitlor, and Storm Clouds, Episode 1 of 5 by Dark Frontiers. Interviews. There have been interviews all around. Deck 8 interviewed Brandflakes. A number of Priority 1 supplementals were broadcast, featuring Jesse Heinig and Captain Gecko. Massively Speaking interviewed Daniel Stahl. Dan also spoke with Gamer's Book, Gamer's Radar, Massively, MMO Bomb, MMO Reporter, MMO RPG, MMO Site, and OCI Group. While it's not much of an interview, Destructoid's Mass Tactics did perform several live playthroughs of the game come the anniversary period. The G&T Show interviewed Cryptic Kestrel, and one of the newest podcasts featuring some of our former interviewees, the Foundry Roundtable, interviewed Brandflakes on their inaugural episode. And finally, just recently announced, StarTrek.com is giving away a movie poster for the forthcoming Paramount release of Star Trek Into Darkness, the details of which can be found in a news post on the Star Trek Online page. And with that, that is the news.
And hello Stowe community, welcome to part 7 of our Back to Basics tutorial series. In this tutorial I'm going to talk about branching and the various tricks that you can do to add branching in your mission using triggers and pop-up dialogues. Really dialogue bubbles that you place directly on a map. And so far, as you've learned the Foundry, you've probably thought of it as a pretty linear tool, as a tool to tell a rather linear story. After all, there's the storyboard, and it's one task followed by another, followed by another. You can sometimes add variety. For example, you can drop one thing on top of another to create a complete all objective, and that means when the player gets to this spot in your mission, they'll have to do everything you put in a complete all box, but they can do it in any order that they want to do it in. So that does add some variety, but at the same time, they have to do everything. So there's not really any branching involved other than decide which direction you want to go and then come back and run the other direction. However, there are some things that you can do with triggers to add branching choices. And let's go to our ground map on Vulcan. Our Vulcan diplomat's still there. I think she's also in the storyboard. Let's take her out of the storyboard. Okay, we'll go back to the Vulcan ground map. And if we click on her, she has this option, has default text. And if we go into the advanced dialogue editor, we can create a much more elaborate default dialogue for her. Oh, come on, work with. We can create a much more elaborate default dialogue with her that could involve different choices or different options, and each of her buttons here has triggers. So for example, if on the map there were different consoles that a player could interact with, and say these consoles weren't in the storyboard, but they're just set on a map and maybe they're set to disappear using this component complete. Now they don't have to disappear because you could put a second console set to appear when the first console disappears. So from the player's perspective, they're just interacting with the console. And you can do that in many different areas of the map. Now, with our Vulcan diplomat, depending upon what the character does, say he goes and scans one console, returns to the Vulcan diplomat, she could say something totally different, or have what you can think of as the cryptic green button response, right when there's an NPC and they say, "How is your day? Have you solved the mystery?" And then there's nothing else that they say. But if you discover a clue and you come back to that NPC, then there's this green text, this additional option to say, "I have found a clue," or maybe it's an additional question you could ask the NPC. And so there's a lot that you can do with that just in the map tab here. But another thing that we can do is, let's go back to the storyboard. We'll put talk to contact, dialogue with contact in there. We'll specify the text. Let's talk to diplomat. And we'll select the diplomat. Stowe's servers are over capacity right now, so this is why the Foundry is so sluggish. And it doesn't really matter what she says for this tutorial. Now, in the storyboard, the task is to talk to her. And then after we talk to her, let's say we want to reach a marker, and let's pretend that we've put a marker, somewhere over here, or somewhere up here. So the task for the player to do is talk to the Vulcan diplomat and then go reach a marker. Well, depending on what the diplomat says, and depending upon the triggers, you could have a lot of stuff happen in between talking to the diplomat and reaching the marker. So, for example, if we go to details and we search for invisible objects, you could put 2 invisible objects at the same spot. Let's call the first one choice A, and then we'll put a second one in called choice B. Choice A will set it to appear when an objective is complete, and that objective will be talk to the Vulcan diplomat. Same thing with choice B. It will become visible when an objective is complete, and that objective is talk to the diplomat. Now here's where the tricky part comes in. I want one to be a choice. I want one of the choices to disappear when the other choice is made, so that the choice doesn't just hang around. So with choice A, we'll want it to be invisible, go invisible when a component is complete, and that component will be choice B. I hope that makes sense. And then choice A, or choice B, will become invisible if choice A is made. Oh, the Foundry is so sluggish. Alright, so now what happens is, depending upon the choice that the player makes, all kinds of other stuff could happen. So let's say the choice A is picked. Well, that could be followed by a group of enemies that beam in the map, and they're set to appear when that component is complete, when the choice A component is complete. Or if the choice B component is complete, something else could happen. Say, a character could have a different dialogue appear with the dialogue bubbles that you place directly on a map. These guys. Okay, this is not going to respond very well. I'm just going to explain it. So the dialog bubbles, they can be set to appear with component completes, and you can see kind of what you could do with this, where you can create a string of different branches depending on the components that are completed and the choices that a player makes. You could also send a player different directions around a map. For instance, if it's do you want to go right or do you want to go left, and then all the different triggers can happen on different parts of the map. So the player doesn't always have to go to the same spot. Now, eventually, despite what you do with all these triggers and components, the player still has to reach that marker, regardless of what choice they make. So that's something to keep in mind. That really is the biggest limitation of branching, is that you're still stuck in the end with a storyboard where the task has to be complete regardless of what choice the player makes. Something also to consider when you do play around with this is it can be very confusing for players, because players are trained to play Star Trek Online in a certain way, and they watch for that go here, do A, scan something else. And when you do this with triggers, you have to kind of disguise it in the story tab, because you don't want the player to see the task of go reach the marker immediately. You want to disguise the task as keep exploring or look for clues. And so when it comes to the point where the player needs to find that reach marker that is tied to that task in the storyboard, you really have to rely on other things like an NPC to say, hey, you go there. So keep that in mind. I mean, there's some really creative things that authors can do with triggers and branching dialogue and pop-up bubbles that you add to the map. But please keep the player in mind also, because it can confuse them when there are too many optional objectives without clear enough instructions on where to go. Okay, I hope that helps. Sorry that the performance of the Foundry isn't really good today, but I hope that's useful to you. Okay, thanks.
Hey everyone, welcome to PrimetimeUGC Special Developer Interview. Tonight we are doubly fortunate to have not one, but two devs on our show. We're really pulling out all the stops for our 20th episode. Sir, why don't you do the honors and let our viewers in on who our guests will be?
Love to. Our very, very special guests are Zeke Sparks, lead designer for the upcoming MMO Neverwinter, and Rob Overmeyer, executive producer. They're here to let us in on the details of this exciting new game, which is going to be, among other great things, a Foundry author's dream come true.
That's right. We're also going to be presenting this interview as we've never done it before. We've got our signal relayed through a state-of-the-art chronotonic satellite system that will allow our signal to traverse space and time, so we may glimpse into their realm. So let's flip the switch and bring on our distinguished guests, all the way from Protector's Enclave. Welcome, please, Zeke and Rob.
I suppose the biggest question is, what's the Foundry in Neverwinter? What's your take on UGC tools?
My take is that the Foundry, it's sort of a generic answer, I guess, but it's true, is the Foundry enables authors, creative types, and people who want to tell stories to do exactly that, to create their own worlds, to expand the story in Neverwinter, to tell classic parts of the story, to recreate their favorite modules from the pen and paper. And the Foundry gives them, or at least we want the Foundry to be available for everyone to be able to do exactly that.
Another important thing to us is that it's not a standalone tool or a standalone game. It's integrated right in with all the regular content. So when you are adding to the world, you are actually adding to the world. You are hooked into the main world that everybody else is going to experience, and you don't have to go to special servers or anything like that.
Right. So in that way, it kind of differs from the STO version.
In that it's sort of integrated better.
Yeah, I think in STO there's sector space you can go to that has missions in it, and there's not a lot of hook points into, say, like Earth space or any of the main hubs, right?
Right.
Right. So what we've done for Neverwinter is we really took that next step and enabled players to use as much as possible. It sort of makes sense in the zone to use as parts of their mission. Doors that are in Protector's Enclave, for instance, is a hub. People will be using those and they won't have to go to a different map. Players can interact and talk to contact that everybody else is generally talking to in the map as well. And it's sort of seamless, right? You can do UGC content, Foundry content right alongside of all of the missions that you're getting from sort of the normal game path content and in the same space.
I have a couple of questions in from Twitter as well, so I want to try and get to them. First one will be, how will Foundry handle custom items and monsters? And he says he knows that the visual or level design assets must be reused, but are there any sort of ways of creating your own custom items and monsters, that sort of thing?
Right. So because it is part of the game world and on the game server that everybody else is on, unlike, I think, Neverwinter 2, which was private servers or private worlds, players won't be creating their own loots and items to give out as rewards. We do definitely have rewards and good rewards for Foundry missions, but they're not so much in the way of custom or player-made loot. There are items that players can definitely make in their missions to tell their story, but I don't think that's the question that person's asking.
Well, I think there's another hunk of questions that can get brought up with that, which is what's your ability to customize or to make new critters and encounters and things like that. So what we've done is we've given access to almost everything that we've used in the game to build the game. So anything that you've seen us use, you'll be able to get to. I mean, for the most part, you'll be able to get to in the Foundry, use to tell your own missions. And then we also have other editing tools. There is a costume editor in there, so you can get in and you can mess around with some pretty powerful things. We put a lot of control in the hands of the player when they're doing stuff like that. So, not all of our pieces work well together in the costume editor, for instance. But instead of restricting all that, we err on giving the ability to players to do what they can with what is in there. And you can make some pretty interesting stuff. And then you can take those costumes and apply them to critters that we have provided that are balanced for the game. So you can't quite make a critter from scratch, but you can make a distinct looking group that behaves in a particular way, that has a particular style of combat to help you tell your story. And maybe that'll help answer what they were getting at as well.
Yeah. One of the other things that we also allow, and it's a recent addition to the Foundry, even for us, is the ability to take those same encounters and groups and then name them. So, if you want to have a special name for an encounter or a group of critters that you created custom costumes for and everything, although you have a template for the combat, you can really change not only just the look and feel, but the names, and you can have that be consistent across all of your quests and campaigns. So you don't necessarily have to stick with just the names of the critters and critter groups that we have in the game.
It's one thing that we've always been hoping for and looking for in certainly Star Trek Online's Foundry is, will we ever be able to have our own sort of, even if it's not a publicly shared template library as such, will we be able to save out, okay, I want this costume and I want to just have this NPC and I want to have them in all the missions in this campaign? We'll be able to sort of share our assets between campaigns without having to remake them each time.
That is something that we are keenly interested on getting as a feature for the Foundry. We have a lot of things that we are very interested in and hopeful to get for launch. That is very high on our list, is a shared asset library for our authors. And no promises. I totally don't want to get your hopes up. So I'm not saying that's a lot of things. But we agree with our authors and think that that's a very useful tool.
And also, it's launch isn't the end. So launch is just the very beginning, right? So we will continue supporting the tool and supporting what is available in the Foundry as the game goes along. So even if we're not able to swing that for launch, something that's going to be high on our list to get to users as fast as we can.
Don't worry, Foundry authors were very patient people in the end.
Oh yes, oh yes.
So long as we get what we're after in the end, we're quite happy.
Well, here's an obvious question. How much can you tell us about that right now?
we've always got to try to keep our marketing handlers happy. So we can't get into too many details, but I think we've talked about it a little bit already, haven't we, Rob? So you've probably got a pretty good idea of.
Yeah, we're definitely taking the tools to. There's going to be some marketing coming up fairly soon for Foundry specifically, but we're going to talk a little bit about sort of what we're doing now and then our goals. So today we just released a new patch to our Foundry testers, and it's essentially we're 80% there. We've got a ton of new features, a ton of new things in the editor, things that are going to make it faster, a lot of stuff on the back end that makes it more efficient in the editing process and a lot cheaper. That stuff's really boring, but wholly from the ground up changed the UI and improved it. It has a brand new look, and all of the editors are, I think, a lot easier than what they were even initially when we started doing some alpha testing for the Foundry. I think a lot of the core features are still the same, costume and character customization and counters, but we also do want to push the envelope for some of our I'll call it AI. It's not AI scripting or anything, but we definitely we're getting more things than we've had in the past for different sort of properties and things that our AI can do. So that's one of the big things that we're doing for Neverwinter Foundry, as well as a lot of things that are really geared towards the community and the authors getting their stuff played, recognized, and noticed, right? Having their content be right in the normal flow and the path, and having a normal gameplay path going to NPCs that give out Foundry content, special contexts that feature content that authors have built that start in the area that the player is in. We have featured content as well. Star Trek kind of has this now, right? We'll get authors from the community that have made some really awesome stuff and feature that so everybody can see it and get a chance to play it. So really we're going full force in the Foundry for support and updating it, and we really want to make an experience that is as great as it is for the authors to be able to tell their stories, for our players to be able to engage with those authors and the author community to play us.
What sort of rewards are Foundry authors going to be able to get from making missions and having people playing them? Is there any sort of specific loot set or something that they'll be getting, or what?
Well, I don't want to go too much into the exact rewards, but definitely there's going to be achievements for both authoring and for the social aspect of the Foundry. So sort of the DM-ish, right? DM ranks is the more you make and the better you make and the more stuff you do. As an author, there are rewards and achievements and perks for that, as well as for people going and playing your stuff. There's also rewards for you as an author for people playing your stuff, as well as for the people that are playing. They can get perk for playing Foundry content. So we really want to get everybody together.
Yeah, and the other thing is that we are trying really hard to make sure that the rewards that you get for playing Foundry, on top of the specific rewards for it being Foundry, just the normative rewards for playing missions inside the Foundry, we're trying to make sure that they parallel the rewards for the rest of the game as closely as possible, so that you're not penalized if you're going in and you're playing something that was written by another player. You're on the same sort of advancement schedule. We're making sure that the game can respond to you whether or not you've played our content or content made by other players. We want to make sure that there's not really a difference there. Okay. And so, we're getting as close as we can to that, which I think is going to be pretty neat.
Yeah, certainly.
So is it fair to say that Neverwinter was originally designed with Foundry in mind?
Oh yeah, you bet. Yeah, that's to us that's a huge part of our game. Making sure that players have the ability and the tools to get in and easily kind of create and tell the stories that they want to tell. And it's certainly something that we want to make sure that has happened in that we like in our games in the past, and that in previous games in and around Neverwinter, that was a huge deal. And so we want to make sure that we support that. And, again, like I was saying before, not just giving you the ability to do it, but by trying to make sure that we integrate it as much as possible, so that it really is kind of a seamless play experience for somebody that wants to get into to user authored content.
We were talking about sort of the integration of the content. Not only do we have large exterior maps, we have also templatized maps. I'll go through the whole thing really quick. We have we'll call them templates where, imagine, sort of rolling hills or, happy meadow, river, bridge map. We have sort of different sort of template maps that then you can lay whatever you want on them, and they're exterior maps. And then we have template maps that are sort of archetypical to standard geography. And they've got some details in them so that you can jump in really quick. Like if you don't want to build a forest from scratch, you can get a forest map and then put some stuff in it. But even better, or the next step from that is that we have the ability to create interior maps from both prefab kits and also be able to create your map from the ground up, room by room by room, and add all sorts of trappings and trimmings to that. So that's something that is we are really excited about for Neverwinters. For the authors to be able to create not only their custom exteriors, but also to create custom room by room interiors with all their own assets placed and everything detailed down to the last bit, just as they wanted.
One sort of slightly technical question is things like we've always struggled in the Foundry in the past with sort of item limits and things like that per map. So do you have any idea what the limits are going to be on how many items we can have in a map, or how many maps are in the mission story sort of thing?
Well, we are still working on our budget stuff right now. We've made a lot of improvements for sort of the weight of missions on the database and stuff like that. So we can probably extend those numbers a bit, but we definitely do need to, conform to some budget. So that's currently in flux. I believe that we can definitely go over what we currently have or what is set up in Star Trek, but it comes to you hit a wall, eventually. If you can I guess you could physically put every single critter and every single effect and every single sound in your mission or your map, and you could publish it, but as soon as anybody plays it, it'll come to a complete stop and crawl for them. And that's not really, we want to make sure that everybody can tell a really good story and have as much as they possibly want to put into that story, but also that everybody playing it can have a really good experience. And I'm sure authors, although they want to pack as much as they can into their maps, they also want players to be able to experience that and have a really good time without things like lag or having to load a bunch of assets. So it's sort of a roundabout way to answer your question, but we're working on budgets. We're trying to extend them as much as we can so that people can have as much as possible in. But there will definitely be a limit on the number of quests you can have in a campaign,
right?
And the number of maps you can have in a quest, and then definitely a cap on the number of assets. The biggest question is really size, and I don't think we tackled that in Star Trek. There is just a cap on the number, but you could put 50 mountains in a map, and that doesn't really stay true to sort of the spirit of the budget system of the cap. So we're going to try to be a lot smarter about it and still give everybody enough flexibility and freedom to make what they want.
Something else that's just come on Twitter. Will we be able to make PvP Foundry areas, things like that, or at least make PvP maps in the Foundry?
That's another one on the list that we love the idea of. We really want to be able to do that. It starts getting more complicated than it seems at first glance.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean we can't find a solution for it, but it's difficult to find a solution for that works really well. That's the kind of thing that it is on our list and we want to do and we want to support. Is it going to make launch? Maybe not, probably not, but it's definitely on our radar, and it's something that we think is really cool.
When will, in beta anyway, when will the beta testers be able to get into the Foundry into the Foundry editor rather? Or do you know which beta weekend that'll be?
We definitely have the alpha testers, and I guess technically we would. I might speak out of turn, but I'll just go for it. It is very likely that we will have we will be in alpha in Foundry and have we have a group of people that are using the Foundry right now and helping us and doing some amazing things. I think on the beta weekend one, their content that they made was what everybody was playing, so that was really very cool to have to see those and played on all of those streams. But I'm definitely not done inviting people. In fact, if you guys know anybody that wants to get into the Foundry Alpha, you can let me know. I am definitely not done getting people in. I want more and more people to get in, test the tools, check the tools out, tell us what they think about them, everything and anything that they can say about them, and I'm interested in hearing. So it's kind of weird, right? I mean, there is a beta going on for the Foundry, and it's a little bit, it's separate than the sort of the focus beta weekends that we had, just a bit ago.
Yeah.
So.
I'm sure we'll be able to find some people for you.
Oh yeah.
I heard one of you guys, both of you guys are in right now, or you can go ahead and say it, I guess, if you are.
Yes.
Yes.
Skirting around it. NDA, do you exist? That brings us on to a little bit of another question that's things like the EULA for Neverwinter. Do you know how it will work with people being able to use sort of existing characters, both game characters and also just standard Neverwinter characters as such that have existed in the IP for goodness knows how many years? Will we be able to use them in the Foundry, or is that going to be an issue, or do you just not know yet?
You know, that's a really good question, and I don't know that I have the answer for that right now. There certainly aren't going to be any extra characters created just for the Foundry on our end. Whether or not you'll be able to sort of make your own if it's a character that we haven't created and put in game, I'm not sure, and we'll have to follow up on that and make sure that it's clear to the authors what exactly is allowable.
Yes, we certainly had some great debates about that in Star Trek Online. Can we use this person? Can we not use this person?
Yeah. I guess my more appropriate answer is I should have said I'm not sure. I'll let the lawyers answer that.
Well, we have a lot of actors involved on the STO side that determine that, the likenesses and so forth.
Right.
Actually, one question that just sprung to my mind. People were commenting on during the beta weekend about scaling in the maps, specifically for mobs for the NPC groups. Do they scale depending on your group size, or are these sort of flat? These are the stats to the number of mobs.
So the scaling that we do for UGC is based on the level of people going into the map. The game itself doesn't actually scale mob size based on your team. There are areas of the game that are single player friendly, and you can certainly group there if you want to, but the difficulty level is tuned for a single player. And there are areas in the game that are tuned for 5-man teams, and those are they spawn harder monsters, which are elite versions. And we're looking into seeing if we can give the ability to have authors be able to tag for 5-man content. But as far as actually scaling to the team size actively, we want to make sure that the experience inside the Foundry matches the game itself. And since that's not something that we do in the main game, that's not something that we want to activate in the Foundry.
Oh, actually, that also leads on to another one. See, so you've given me questions here. You were talking about leveling, it sort of bases on your level. Will there be any sort of level-gated content in the Foundry? So, for instance, in Star Trek Online, certain mobs can only be used at, say, level 35 plus and things like that. Does that exist in Neverwinter?
So we've done our best to make sure that we have as much freedom as possible for the authors to make whatever they want. So we don't have specific restrictions on critters per level. The reason why is because it gets a little bit messy. The author has to pick something, and then only some people can check it out, and then if they try to talk about it. So what we've done instead is we essentially, unless it completely breaks and we work with the community and they decide absolutely not, we want level restrictions. The likelihood of that is probably low. But anyways, what we've done is we've taken those same critters, those groups of critters and encounters, and we've sort of made sure that they are appropriate to be able to deal with at lower levels and at higher levels, if that makes sense. Even though an author may put some encounters that are relatively hard to deal with, if someone at a lower level, and they were thinking that maybe level, 40s or 50s and so on, we're going to play this stuff. If that same mission was played by somebody who was level 20, they would most likely be able to handle it. They may need to get a buddy, but they're not completely demolished by it. So we try to be pretty smart about what we think players can and can't handle based on the powers that the creatures have. So that same creature spawning in at level 50 or 60 or 70 or whatever going up, the powers that they use at those levels may not be used at the lower levels. So super comet attacks from space may not happen at level 10 per se. So that's how we were trying to want to get around so people can still have fun, still have the author's mission to the Foundry be accessible and not get really frustrated on both sides, the player and the author, when people are saying, oh, I can't play your mission, it's too hard. Instead, they can say, oh, I played your mission and it was great at level 10 and at 20 and at 30 and so on.
Well, I have one more question before I hand it over to you guys to have the final word, and that's, will we get dragons in Foundry?
Yes. I'll just say yes.
Yay. Oh, and actually, leading on from that, will we get 3-headed dogs? It's just a personal thing.
I don't think that'll happen for launch.
Damn.
But yeah, we're trying to make sure that the dragons will actually work for Foundry. Now, can you put them in a 10 by 10 room? Probably not. But
oh no, we'll try.
Yeah,
we'll try.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody will probably find a way to do it too, and it might be the best thing ever. I don't know.
Just to sort of cover what I said, just to make sure that nobody in marketing or legal yells at me. I think yes, there will be dragons. It will be appropriate and maybe not giant dragon fights for launch. Maybe something that we save for something cool. But I think it's integral to Dungeons and Dragons to have Dungeons and Dragons.
We also, just to make sure that that's covered, we'll have dungeons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
We're forward-thinking people.
I've never heard someone talking about dungeons as being forward-thinking before.
Well,
actually, I just have one very final question before everything. I have lots of final questions. You'll learn this about me. What's your sort of plan for new features? Do you have like big features that you want to add to the Foundry after launch or...
Absolutely, yes. I can just cut you off there. We have a huge list. We have a list that is driven by our authors, driven by authors from Star Trek and the authors that we're working with now, in Neverwinter. We have a lot of really passionate people here at Cryptic that are authors themselves and just want to see so much happen for the Foundry and want to do as much as they can for it. So we definitely have our launch list. We have our just after launch list. We have our updates, 1, 2, and going on for features that we are definitely passionate about and eager to get out to the community. And the best part of that is that we're 100% on board, and I hope our community of authors is as well, to working with them to find out which of those features and additions they want most and what they want first versus second and so on.
Or if we were completely wrong. And here's the new list. That's one of the great things that's exciting about developing MMOs is, we plan for the future and we know what we think will be good and what we think will make the community happy. But once it launches, well, all of that can change and listen to the community and, so we like to think that we're pretty smart and that the lists are pretty well thought out and, sometimes they are and sometimes we find out, wow, nobody cared about that. Well, let's not do that anymore. Let's do this other thing instead. So that list that we've got is tentative and can and will totally be rewritten based on what the actual players want.
Well, so long as the cutscene tool's on the top, it's all fine.
Oh my goodness. You're making me sweat.
Yeah. After launch, are any of the Foundry team for Neverwinter going to go back over to STO and maybe upgrade any of that?
Well, it so the answer to that is that launch doesn't stop work for us. So once we launch, very little changes for the development team. We continue adding on to the game, and we continue supporting it. So there's not a lot of personnel moving that happens right after launch. Now, all of Cryptic is based on the same core technology, and so there are things that we develop that are constantly getting pulled from our project and added back into Star Trek to make sure that continues to improve. So it winds up kind of being up to the Star Trek team which features we are doing that will work for them, because not all of them will. We have a really nice interior map editor, which would be great to see in Star Trek, but will it work? It might not even work with the way that things are set up on Star Trek. So it's kind of up to them to sort of evaluate that. see how hard it would be to retrofit it for STO. But that happens constantly. We have code and information and ideas going from team to team and being adopted all the time. But as far as team size, everybody that you're stuck with right now, you're stuck with for a long time after launch. We don't like to move things around very much. So.
Well, I think that's all our questions.
Well, fantastic.
This is where we sort of hand it over to you guys to say, what do you want to reveal to us, or is there anything you particularly want to say to people in general?
I think Rob and I have done a pretty good job of maybe getting ourselves in trouble here already. But I just want to say,
if you want to say anything to the viewers or to the future UGC users.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say thanks for giving us a chance to get on and talk about it, and I hope you're enjoying what you see, and I hope that means soon we'll let you guys be able to talk about it, and you can sort of tell everybody else what good stuff we've done. And I hope people are really going to enjoy the ability to author and the tools and power that we're putting in the hands of the users in Neverwinter. So yeah, get in and check it out.
The only addition I have is the Foundry and UGC and authors don't stop at the creation in Neverwinter. I had said before, we're very passionate and eager to start working with the community and getting everybody in and making content and connecting people. The Foundry and its authors and the content that they make is as much a part of Neverwinter and every player of Neverwinter's life. And that's something that we are dedicated to making happen, and the support of that community just be rock solid, and get everybody together and see the amazing world that the authors create and get people to play it. So I'm just really excited, and can't wait till everybody starts making stuff. And thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Hello, and welcome to episode 20 published in prime time. There are a few first-time authors on the list this time around, and we also have missions for both factions. It's an exciting time for PrimetimeUGC with the upcoming release of Neverwinter Online. We will also be listing new quests and campaigns that are sent to us via mailbag@PrimetimeUGC.com when the time comes, so be sure to tune in. First up, as usual, are the Federation missions, and starting the list is Protect the Trade Route by XCOM 43, Battle Group Chaos Rumble by Torsten 1009, and Engineering Assortment by Gamma Delta 1, Mirror Invasion, Friend or Foe by Gamerboy 100, Battlestar by First Timer Unknown McCloud, Cubageddon by Juan 5, Project Vortex by Sander233, Mission of Mercy by Trekkie1134, and finally, Return to Armageddon by Blue Darky. And on the Klingon side, A Warrior's Academy, Mission 1 by DJF021, and the KDF version of Battlegroup Chaos Rumble by Torsten 1009. That's the list for episode 20. We hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to submit your mission titles to mailbag@PrimetimeUGC.com or post them to the Promote Your Foundry mission thread on STO Forum. Thanks, and we'll see you next time on Primetime UGC.